Hello and welcome to today's video. This time we're taking a look through the next batch of vintage Star Trek classic series paperbacks that I've got to clean. So this time round it's the later pocketbook series, and these are the numbered ones right from the very first one right the way through, including the giant size books to the end of the numbered series. So sit back, relax, and let's get to it. Okay then, so the very first pocket Star Trek book was this one, Star Trek the Motion Picture. Now, I'm hoping, a bit like the last lot of Star Trek books, that we don't have absolutely masses of work to do, but what I'm going to do is do them in little wedges as we go along. So I'll go through the books, I'll check they're all okay internally, then we'll brush them, then we will polish them. So we'll do all the different stages as we go along, because we've got over 100 books to get through here, so there's quite a few. And as I said, I'm hoping that in most cases I cleaned these up pretty much as I got them, except the ones that I've had sort of for years. So those ones are a bit more unknown. But all of them are quite dusty along the top. And now that I've completed this set, and I've pretty much filmed most of them, I'm going to put some of them in temporary short-term storage just for a little while I continue having a bit of a change around with my collection. I'm having to make a little bit of room because I've got a big sort of Star Wars plan that needs to go ahead, but that's going to take a lot of space, unfortunately. So with dust on the inside there, I don't know. So yeah, that might take a bit of time to get sorted, and predominantly I need to make a little bit of room for all the stuff that I'm going to be unpacking, because the Star Wars stuff is just, there's lots and lots of boxes of it, and I really want to give it a decent sort of sort out, really. So although there's a lot of books here today, on the whole I don't think they're too bad condition, and we may not need to actually do much in the way of repair work, but we will still need to brush them and polish them. So I shall do a big pile, then we'll start that. Now, these are all in order, and I'm pretty sure most of these are first printings as well. Some books I've got doubles of. A few of them are, I think I've got a few signed ones as well. Not by cast members, but by the actual authors. And certainly some absolute classics here, like this one. 83. So these are, so Star Trek the Motion Picture, that's about 79, 80. So that's sort of the period we're looking at here, right the way through into the 90s. In fact, it might even be the early 2000s. So there's one there that's signed by Diane Duane. It's quite cool. I've got a few like that, a few signed editions. Not many, because you don't often see these Star Trek books signed, in actual fact. Corona. Greg Bear. See, this one's got a little Odyssey 7 stamp. And Odyssey 7 was like a science fiction shop, a bit like Forbidden Planet. And I'm going to leave that on because I think it's a little bit of history, rather than taking it off, you know. So there wasn't masses of books, because we're now on to Star Trek 3. So when was that? 1984, was it, Star Trek 3? So there wasn't stacks of books being published, but there was quite a bit of non-fiction as well that came out. Let's just have a look. When was Star Trek 3? 84? June 1984, yeah. And it was almost like, it was around the time Next Generation came along, which was, what, 87? That was when Star Trek publishing really sort of ramped right up. Here's another one signed by Diane Duane. I guess she must have done a couple of conventions. Oh, once again, up from Odyssey 7. Yeah, maybe she popped in. Right, so that's the first little stack, but I've got, as I said, I've got a lot to get through. So we'll put these back into order. And we'll grab a little wedge here. And let's give these a brush rather, first of all, then a polish. So how has everyone been? I'm hoping you've had a good week. I know I have plenty of people who follow these videos on a weekly basis, and they have, in a funny sort of way, become a bit of a blog about what's sort of going on in my life and on YouTube with the channel. So the channel's doing great guns at the moment. It's doing very, very well. It's had lots of views lately, which is always good. We've had a little flurry of new Patreon and YouTube channel memberships. Now, I don't do channel memberships on this channel, but I do it on my main channel. So if you want to support the channel that way, or either this channel or my main one, you can head on over to youtube.com and just look up Jules Burt, or you can go to patreon.com and just join the Patreon from as little as $1 or £1. So it's not expensive, but you know, it does really make a difference. YouTube ad revenue, you know, it really is quite sporadic, and it's pretty much a roller coaster. So a regular little amount coming in makes a huge difference, as you can imagine. There we are. So some of those were actually a little bit worse than others. Now I need to flip them round again for the final time, because I'm going to be giving these a polish. Now, I treated myself to not a brand new, but a freshly cleaned duster. So let's get my old Mr. Sheeny. And as you know, I don't spread, although these are okay because they're more recent books. So you could spray directly onto the covers, but I find it's better just to soak the cloth like that first, soak the duster like that, and then you can apply it to the covers that way. And you know, some of these will really benefit from it, others we're not going to really be able to notice much of a difference. But none of these have had this sort of treatment before. They've been done internally, but I've never brushed them, and I've never polished them, except the last sort of few editions which have come my way, not least of which from one of my patrons. Speaking of patron, my friend Chris Edwards and his daughter Juliet. So they were very early fans of the channel, and I would almost class them, you know, really as friends now, you know. And we try and look out for each other, and you know, if something comes out over here which Chris is after, I'll snag him a copy, and vice versa. And he has a fantastic collection. I have featured it before, where Chris has got a dedicated room with, I believe, pretty much every Star Trek book that's ever been printed, and he's got them in really top shape as well, which does make a difference. It's a really, really nice condition. And I don't think he's got every non-fiction book, but he's got all the stories, and what a collection it is. And they went through following sort of my techniques, and have cleaned, he's cleaned his entire sort of Star Trek collection. So Chris has been rather generous, and he's been putting in his time to finding me some books at the moment, actually, from the States, which is quite good. So there's an awful lot of stuff that doesn't, or it's very, very difficult to find over here. You can find it in the States on places like ebay.com, but the overseas postage is absolutely ridiculous, usually far, far more than the cost of the books themselves. So Chris has been very generous with his time and managed to track some bits and pieces down for me, which I'm very, very appreciative of. So thank you, Chris. So I am pleased to say, I don't know if you saw my recent video. It was actually just a couple of weeks ago, where I went to the Shepton Mallet Toy Fair for the first time in many, many years, and it was actually really great. And I got to meet the chap who runs the fair. He owns sort of bulldog fairs, and he inherited the business from his dad, I hear. And he was really happy for me to go around and and film the show, which I was pleased to do. It was a great show. I didn't buy loads, but it was great to see some different dealers. There was certainly some quality stuff on display this time round. That's for certain. Bit of a dirty spine here. Dirty stroke faded a little bit. So that was fantastic. I really enjoyed the Shepton Mallet Toy Fair. I'd love to go to some a bit further away, but because they're so far away, if you want to get in and get sort of filming, you need to be leaving very, very early, and that's not always possible. You know, I don't want to be getting up at like 5 in the morning to go to a toy fair, but if I want to do one of the ones that's quite a way away, something like Sandown, for example, or the NEC shows in Birmingham, that's what I'd have to do. So I'm going to have a think about that, because I suppose I could always stay overnight, but I like to go out with a few mates, and there's the driving up and down in a day is, you know, quite tiring. So I'll have a little think about it. The next sort of big show I've definitely got planned is going to be the London Paperback show. Now that's happening at the end of July, and I haven't quite figured out the plan just yet, but my friend Bob, who's the science fiction specialist, Dorset Bob, he is going. He bought the last couple of tables for dealers that were spare, so it's a complete sellout for the dealers, which is fantastic. And it's tagged on to an ephemera fair. It's like a paper ephemera fair. Now it's in London, but I might be tempted to go up with Bob and give him a hand on his stall as a dealer, as it were, and we would leave very, very early, sort of like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to be a long day, but I think it will be worth it, because, well, this is the first paperback show that there's been in the best part of 4 years, so we are long, long overdue. So I shall definitely be there for that one. Thankfully it doesn't clash with anything, because we've not had stacks of notice, and I shall be definitely filming it. So look out for that in early August, when it'll probably be a series of videos, and I'm going to try and interview dealers and collectors while I'm there as well, and I hope that I'll see many people who watch my channels there, so that would be super cool if we could. So yeah, so we got that coming up. Now another thing we've got coming up is my friend George is now sort of booked in, all being well, for me to go around and film his 70s Doctor Who collection. Now, it was probably a good 2 or 3 months ago when we did his 60s collection, and that was a lot of work because there was loads to get out, and basically it filmed a room up, which was just incredible to see it all out like that. I mean, what a record we've now got of his 60s collection. But his 70s is equally as good, and certainly we're looking forward to I'm looking forward to going through all that lot, because it's going to be loads. And an era when I started picking up Doctor Who stuff, you know, I started buying the books sort of mid-70s, or had them bought for me by my mum, and it was some of the earliest books I ever read. So there's all the Doctor Who books, and there's all the toys as well. There's just so much of it, so much of it to get through. Lots of records from the 70s as well. I believe George has got pretty much all of them, so we've got plenty to see, and we're also going to film a comic video while we're there as well. So all in all, going to be pretty cool. Right, there we are. So that's the first of 1, 2, 3, 4, so about 5, 7 piles. Okay, Star Trek Deep Domain number 33. Always love this particular one. This is a great book. That looks almost unread. Dreams of the Raven. And you've got to say, the artwork on some of these is really, really terrific. They really knocked it out of the park, and around this time, this sort of Star Trek line really got high quality, in my opinion, compared to what else is being put out. If you look at the Doctor Who books that were being published around this time, with their really cheap photo montage covers, just pathetic in comparison. This is really something, and yeah, Boris jacket on that one. Superb, superb. This is one of the giant size ones, which should be in approximate position for when these books were published. That's how I've tried to do these, in published order. And the other thing is, a lot of these books were, they had audio adaptations as well, often by two of the original cast, usually. And I absolutely love those, particularly at the time I was doing a bit of driving for my dad back in the late 80s and 90s, and I would play them on cassette, you know, and absolutely loved Star Trek audiobooks. And when the cast started doing their memoirs, I used to listen to those on cassette as well. The Shatner ones are absolutely terrific. More so than the Leonard Nimoy ones, but there you go. A lovely jacket. But yeah, I much preferred the American editions to the British ones, which were published over here by Titan Books. And they use the same jackets, but they just don't feel the same. And I'm just not a fan of them. It's as simple as that. I'm just not a fan. So each big pile I'm splitting into two. Yeah, these aren't too bad, but I hope it's a fun way to see the complete sort of Star Trek, because I've got the whole lot of these now. Took a little bit of filling in. As I said, I was helped by my friend Chris over in the States. So where were we? We were talking about the Doctor Who. So that's coming up. And as I said, we're going to do a comic book video as well. It's been a while since I did any comic books. I did film my friend George's run of Amazing Spider-Man 1 to 100. And we're not 100% set on what we're going to be doing next time, but I think it's probably going to be Uncanny X-Men 1 to 100, which I think will be really cool. So that's like the proposed plan, but we shall see. There's other stuff I'd like to do from George's incredible comic book collection. It's just all about George having the time to dig them out, because it's such a big job finding some of this stuff. It's a bit like when I go looking for certain things. I sometimes it takes me a bit of time to find it, you know. Particularly at the moment, sort of stuff like magazines. I've got quite a few magazines. I've tried to slim them down and just keep the very best of it, but there's still stuff that I haven't got easily access to, and I'd like to if I can, but just not easily there. Yeah, these Trek books hold a lot of nostalgia for me, they really do, and I'm so pleased to be able to have sort of say I've finally licked the original set of what I would have had. Of course, back in the day I actually sold a lot of these. In my store we sold all the Star Trek books that were in print, absolutely everything, and used to do very well with them. Sold all the Doctor Who books as well, and there weren't many places where we were that did a lot of the Doctor Who books. Yeah, some of these aren't actually too bad at all. All I can think of is their more modern editions that I've picked up in the last few years while I've been systematically cleaning my books, but this was a huge part, and now that once this is done I'll have these out the way, it's going to give me room to go on to the next series, which definitely aren't complete. So stuff like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, there are books that I'm missing from those series, so I'm very much looking forward to trying to pin down exactly what I'm short of. But it's always that's the fun of collecting, isn't it? I've been trying to fill in a few gaps with my vintage comic book related paperbacks as well lately, but I've picked up odd ones here and odd ones there, so I'm pleased with what I've got. It's just they just don't seem to turn up over here, and even the most recent stuff from the mid-80s is fast approaching 40 years old, and that's probably the reason. And the very earliest ones came out in the 60s, so they're even older, and that's why they're just not turning up. It's not like someone's recently read them, and you're sort of waiting for someone to, unfortunately, to pass away, and then their collection goes on the market, so that's sort of where we're at. But it's okay. I'm filming this particular video on a Sunday today, and unfortunately it's a beautiful Sunday. Not unfortunately, but it is a beautiful Sunday weather-wise. So it's meant that everyone and their uncle has been out doing gardening and sort of building work and yard work. It's exactly what I've been doing myself. I've been off a couple of days and I've done some... my garden's such a big project this sort of time of year that I try and do just a bit every day, basically. So on a day off, I'll break up the day when it's not the peak of the sun, obviously, but when it's a little bit cooler, and I will just go out and I'll do a half an hour or so in the garden each day, and that way you do get on top of it as long as you're religious about it. And I find if it's a day when I'm at home and I'm filming, it's a good time, or a good little way this time of year to break up the day a bit, so you're not just staring at a computer screen. That was quite dirty, that one, so pleased to got quite a bit of dirt off that one there. So yes, quite a good way of breaking up the day and the screen time. So yeah, so as I said, the neighbours are being a little bit noisy. So if it gets really bad, I'll just pause and we'll pick up where I left off. So, as I said, looking ahead, we've got the Doctor Who videos planned. Now, I got my friend Andy. Now, Andy and I do... Well, Andy comes along to the toy fairs with me, and he's also been sharing his incredible vintage sort of bubblegum stroke trading card collection with us. And that's been in a series of videos on the channel, which I'm sure... on my main channel, which I'm sure you've come across. The last lot was a 3-parter on sort of vintage Jerry Anderson cards, which is fantastic. There's loads to cover, and we've done his like Mars Attacks cards, and we've done his James Bond cards. There's just been so many sort of comic book related ones as well, all the different Batman sets. It's been superb, it really has. Now Andy and I are going to go on a bit of a road trip, not miles and miles and miles. It's going to be a one-dayer, but we're going to go to Honiton, which is a town fairly near to me. It's about an hour, I would say, just over an hour maybe in the car, so not miles away. But that Honiton is great because it's got 3 second-hand bookshops in the one street. And this time we're going up because there's also a toy shop up there, a collector's sort of toy shop called Focus Toys. And I met him for the first time at Shepton Mallet, and we said, well, we'll come along and we'll do a visit. So we've got a date booked in, and I'm going to film the whole lot because I last went to Honiton just after lockdown lifted. So we're probably talking 1.5 to 2 years ago since I was last there. And people seem to enjoy my little look around the bookshops, and I picked up a few bits as well. As you'd imagine, if you're looking at 3 second-hand bookshops plus all the charity shops, which I went in as well, plus there was some stalls on the market, then there was quite a bit to look at, and potentially on the way back we might pop into another little place called Newton Abbot, which is a place where I used to work regularly when I managed a bookshop, and we'll see what's happening in Newton Abbot as well. Not that there's any particular shops to go to, but there will be the markets, so and all the charity shops, of course. So we'll have a little look and see what we can see, basically. looking forward to that little road trip adventure. But this was the end of the second stack. I said there's 6 stacks in all, and I was thinking I'd do the whole lot in one sort of video, so I'll see how we're getting on for time, and take it from there really. So now we've got stack starting with number 26 here, pawns and symbols. And I managed to do the other stack out of order. So there you are. So not to worry, these things happen. So this was the stack that came after one of the earlier ones there. But the main thing is you're getting to see all the original sort of Star Trek novels here. So that is the main part. Another beautiful one-off there. Star Trek 4. So no books will be missed, shall we say. They just may not be all in the exact order that they were published, which was my original plan. Yeah, see, this one's once again completely out of place. It's number 18. So how come this is out of place? What's this? 18, 19. Yeah, honestly, can't get the staff, you know. But it's okay, because we are still getting to see all the books, and that's the main part. I said there was an awful lot of books to see here, and I didn't want any not to be featured, so we are doing the whole lot in one foul swoop. But after this stack I should be back on track, and they should be all in order again, with a bit of luck. This is the slightly controversial one. That's the original printing of it, and then that was the reprint, which had a few tiny little changes to it, you know, of Killing Time. Dwellers in the Crucible. Okay, so that's cool. So let us put this one, because they need to be done first, then this lot second. And then I shall just have a little recap and make sure everything is in the correct order going forward. We can't have that, can we? And then we'll be just about halfway through everything that we need to look at today. Now, if you are interested in the Star Trek books, I've done a dedicated series of videos on these, where I break down the actual plot lines and a bit of history about the authors as well, over on the main channel, and that's like a whole playlist there for you to have a little look through. So if you are looking for more detailed information about the Star Trek books, it is just a couple of clicks away, but I'll put a link to that playlist in my description on this channel down below, so you can go directly there if you want to. But thankfully I can't hear anyone mowing their lawns or digging up drives at the moment, so we're making hay while we can. Right, let's give these a polish, and then I'm going to rejig them to make sure everything that we've done is back in order, because we can't, as a collector, it's just not the done thing, is it? Let's be honest, it is not the done thing. We cannot abide collections that are out of order. Thankfully, though, a lot of these Star Trek books, they got the numbers right on the front there. It's not exactly difficult. It's just the first handful which don't have a number on, and also the Giants don't have a number. They were like standalone novels, and I have to admit, the Giants stories were great, but I preferred reading the shorter Star Trek stories, because reading one of these, you know, the actual, it's like, I don't know, just sitting down and watching an original episode. You can get through these Star Trek books generally quite quickly, I've just love them, absolutely love them, and I always have, really. Less so the more recent stuff, but they are great. Another series that I really like, but I just didn't have room to fit them in the 3 boxes with all these books, was the Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Now, we will see one of those at the very end, which I've got in A format, but those are in B format. They're much larger, sort of trade paperbacks as they were, and that's a fantastic series, the Strange New Worlds, and they're written by fans. And you could write about any aspect of Star Trek, any little minor sort of character or concept that really appealed to you. And the very best of the submissions were included in the Strange New Worlds sort of anthology. And there's 10 of those, and I have them all, and they are absolutely brilliant to dip in and out of. If you had a favourite character, chances are it's been covered in one of those Strange New Worlds magazines. Yeah, so I've got 2 copies of Killing Time. That's the first printing from America, with the raised gold on, which signifies it's a first print. This is the first Canadian printing. It's got the little maple leaf in, but it's also the one which it was corrected before it was published in Canada, so it's got the corrections and the offending text removed. A bit of a silly thing, but it's even happening today, isn't it? So with books getting rewritten or sort of brought up to a modern sort of acceptable standard, shall we say, which I think is a bit of a silly thing to do, but I understand why they're doing it. But I just think books should be left as they were written, in context, and then people can make their own minds up. Just put a little disclaimer at the front. You know, having to rewrite or edit rather the Bond books, you know, they were very much of their time, you know, when they were written in the 1950s, when attitudes were different. And I just don't see the sense of changing them now, all these years later. I mean, this is James Bond. It just is, to me, it just doesn't sit very well, you know, but there you go. At least the books are still staying in print, unlike in Florida, where certain books are literally being banned. More and more books are being banned literally by the day. It's just, the rest of the world is looking at Florida and thinking, this is just insane. And it's literally just down to the one guy. It's Ron DeSantis and his extreme, you know, point of view. It's just crazy. And well, he was voted in, so whether that's something that his supporters are happy with, I don't know, but it'd be very interesting if he does announce his presidency or run for presidency and see what traction that gets. I think within the Republican Party it's going to take a miracle to deplace Trump, unless he is sent to prison. Then I guess he's going to find it difficult to campaign, isn't he? But the rest of the world waits and watches. There we are. Anyway, this is not a politics channel. Just we ended up on there because of the banned books, which we were talking about. There we are. So let me get those back into order now. Okay, now carry on in the correct order. We've got number 47 here, which is Kobayashi Maru. slightly did a whole stack out of order, which is just how it goes, because there's a lot to get through. But we are over halfway now, which is pretty cool. As I said, I think I wanted to push through, and rather than split this into 2 videos, to do the whole lot in one vid, and that's exactly what we're going to do, because these later ones I think are all in pretty nice condition, apart from a little the dust along the top there. So I don't think it's going to take a lot of time to go through them, and the video is not going to be like 2 hours long. I think it's just going to be probably end up a little bit over an hour or so, so we'll see. But it would be nice just to put them all up, the complete numbered Star Trek in one hit, and that's definitely what I'm aiming for. Now these later ones I'm less familiar with. It was those early ones that on the whole I read and reread and listened to the audiobooks and knew the stories really, really well. These later ones I didn't, because I guess my tastes were changing, and although I was still collecting the books on and off, and I was selling these when they were brand new, I wasn't reading so many, and I don't know why that was. I think by now, obviously, the Next Gen series was in full swing. I don't think we had the DS9 books yet, but I did read a few of those, and I definitely read some of the Voyagers when they were being published as well. Let's just have a little look at this for number 61. Yeah, 92. So I think DS9 was just around the corner, but it was around the time I was opening my shop, was in 92, and yeah, I was reading all sorts, lots of science fiction back then as well. And I was dabbling in reading a bit of like classic crime. All good stuff. But I'd say Star Trek was very much riding high at the point. Yeah, good stuff. These are actually unread, and I think I did very well with my copies from, I said, from my friend Chris over in America. He definitely looked after me. So that's another stack, and those are pretty much in nice condition. So I don't think I'm going to have too much work to do except the brush and then a light polish. I don't think any of those are particularly showing as like dirty. You know, they just need a bit of a light polish, really. So yeah, I have got another trip to Dorset Bob's planned. So if you did see those videos I've been twice now, and Bob's an incredible science fiction collector, and I'm going up with Steve, the outlaw bookseller, and Steve's going to film Bob's hardback science fiction collection, which is really, really something. Now, while they're doing that, I'm going along at the same day. I'm going to probably pull a few little books for myself, as I usually do, but I'm also going to film some of Bob's pulp magazine collection, which is really, really terrific. So that's what I'm going to be doing, whilst the guys are filming, Steve and Bob are filming Bob's hardback collection, which is really amazing. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing that, I can tell you. Must be careful to keep all these in order. They all sort of blend in, don't they? Yeah, so I have a few like little trips away planned, little on location, shall we say, videos, which is cool. It's been a little bit of time since I've reviewed many new books, and I have got a brand new book on the original Universal King Kong, and the writer who wrote it, which was a guy called Edgar Wallace. So there's a fantastic book on that just come out. It's written by a chap called Stephen Jones, and he's like quite a famous horror editor and writer. There we are. And I'm about a quarter of the way through it now. I wanted to give it a good read before I actually sort of did my review, and yeah, it's great, really well researched and nicely illustrated as well, which is, on those sorts of books, that's really all you want, isn't it, you know? Right, let's give this lot a cursory polish, but they don't need a massive polish. That's the good thing. They really don't. These are in quite a nice state as they are. So we'll just soak that little corner again. Let's now we can put these straight in on top of there because they're definitely in order. That's 47. There's a couple of, if you are into collecting the Star Trek books, there's a couple of extremely lively Facebook groups, and they're very easy to find. Just type in like Pocket Star Trek or Star Trek TOS books, and they do, you know, they focus on all the Star Trek books, but you get to see other people's collections, and there's some real great ones on there. Lots of people with huge runs, filling up entire walls with all the Star Trek books in order, and well, that's the way to do it, isn't it? If you've got the space. I've never, unfortunately, had the space for all the Star Trek books to be out like that, but it's definitely on my plan. So when I eventually get my library, obviously I want to get my most vintage paperbacks out first, and I think they will look fantastic. But once they're all out, hopefully I'll have room for all this sort of stuff as well, all the TV and movie tie-ins. But yeah, some of the people on the Facebook groups have got their collections out on display now, and it's quite an impressive sight, particularly if you've got a big collection, because the spines are, as you can see, really colourful, and they do look lovely on the shelf. And if you've got like a comprehensive collection, well, it's just brilliant, isn't it? Biggest problem is having time to read them, of course. Thankfully, the Star Trek books are great to collect for other reasons, not least of which the generally incredibly high quality of the cover artwork. Consistently, Star Trek has really, right from the very 60s, but Star Trek has had some great cover artwork, and it's a tradition which thankfully has gone on to this day. So really fantastic stuff. Now, I'm not sure if you came across it, but over on my other channel, I did do what I refer to as it was a 3-hour shunting session, which actually took about a week to film, and it's where I did a lot of rejigging of some of my bookcases to make a little bit more room for certain series, and I had also got another bookcase from IKEA, which I was able to utilise to full effect, as it were, but it's meant that I was able to bring some stuff down from the loft and put it into storage, which was good news. I said the books are there, but they're in short-term storage, so they're still on the property, but they're not on display in the shelves. And it's either because, like these Star Trek books, I've done them sort of in detail now, and they don't need to be on display, but at least I know exactly what I've got, and they are just being stored safely until such time as I get a decent library together, which will happen as soon as my son leaves home. In fact, is when it's going to be happening. And he knows that, and he's cool about it. So, as expected, this has proved to be a bit of a longer video. But thankfully, the neighbours seem to have been quiet, which is excellent. It's the middle of the day now, and although it's nice and cool here in the shade in my studio, outside it's probably a little bit too hot to work. It's definitely too hot to be doing gardening. I tend to do my gardening now when it's like this, either very early in the morning or about 6 o'clock at night, when the garden has fallen into shade. That's the sort of time that I do it. So there we are. As expected, these last few are taking a little bit quicker now because the books are pretty much brand new. But there we are. So that's 2/3 of the way through. So we've still got 2 more big stacks to look at. Okay, then cracking on. Number 68 here. So as I said, we've got 2 stacks to go. There's actually got a little turned over corner there. But I've got to say, they're really, I mean, I got my glue out and my other tools there, just thinking I might have a little bit of repair work to do, but I've really not had anything. So I do count myself quite lucky there. But that's also a good thing because we were quite, we had a lot to get through, as it were. So this is number 71 here. So the numbering on these went up to, not quite, it's in the mid-90s, I believe, but we got some more one-off books and like mini-series at the end, which is something that they started doing, like trilogies and that, and it was a bit formulaic, and then they'd release the trilogy in an omnibus, and it used to sort of cheese me off a little bit, but it was a way to sort of, keep people coming back for more. Number 75 here, this was almost published like a giant, just under 400 pages, so almost twice the size of a regular book there. Fantastic, a slightly older Mr. Sulu there, Captain Sulu. Yeah, on the Excelsior. I was hoping he was going to get a little part in Picard, but they didn't in Picard Series 3. I won't give away who does appear, but I was hoping it was him, but sadly, I know he'd been in the UK a lot, George Takei, in a play in the West End, so he'd been over here for a couple of months, so I think that's why he just wasn't around to film it, sadly. It's number 80, the Joy Machine. A real change in sort of design on some of these now, and I've got to say I'm not a fan of these slightly later ones. That's a bit more traditional. Harry Mudd one as well, mud in your eye. I don't think we'll ever take away the charm of the original early 80s pocket books, which were just the best, really, in my opinion. But these are all pretty much brand new, aren't they? Not been read copies, so this is My Brother's Keeper. Let's make sure these are in the right order. And they weren't, so My Brother's Keeper book 1 is this one. There's book 2. And there's book 3. Okay. All of those, I would say, are pretty high quality copies, So we'll just give them a very cursory dust off. But I don't think they're too bad at all, in all honesty. I remember meeting Walter King. It was when I had the shop in the 90s, and I was doing one of the official Star Trek conventions. It was in Cardiff, and Walter Koenig was a guest, and he was a big very early Disney fan, he also collected big little books as well. And at some shows I'd heard that he would trade like signed photos for like memorabilia and stuff like that, but we didn't have any at the time. But he did come around the dealer's room and said hello to people. And ironically, our stall was right next to Dave Prowse, Darth Vader, and we spoke a lot to him at the weekend. And Dave Prowse, actually, I bought two signed photos from Dave Prowse of Alec Guinness, who was still around at the time of this convention, and they were photos of him and of Alec Guinness and Dave Prowse sort of dueling with Death Stars, with lightsabers rather, on the Death Star, and I was able to get Dave Prowse to like co-sign them, so that was pretty cool. And you know that they were the real deal from Dave Prowse, so that was really cool. I think, trying to remember who else is there. I think Robert Picardo was there, Nana Visitor, a few people like that. Trying to think what Next Generation guest was there. I really can't remember. It was so long ago. I remember it being really good, and Cardiff itself was a great city to visit for a few days, and we were in like I seem to remember my sister was in rented accommodation at the time because she was a student back then, and we sort of stayed in her house because she was away at the time, so it was like perfect really. We could we had our lodgings all sorted out. It was a long convention. It was a whole like weekend, as I recall, as these things sometimes are. And there was a lot of big dealers over from the States as well, which was cool to see. And they had some just absolutely incredible memorabilia for sale. It really was quite something. I remember at the time as well, the Playmate stuff had just started getting published, and there was a lot of Playmate stuff, and there was a lot of stuff from the Intergalactic Trading Company. Do you remember those guys? They were Star Trek specialists. I think for a long time they moved over to eBay, but I don't know if they're still around to this day. But at one point they were huge sort of Star Trek dealers, and sort of general science fiction as well for that reason. But I don't know if they're still around. I'd be surprised if they weren't. But they had some incredible stuff through their hands. So once again, I'm polishing these slightly out of order, so I need to make sure that the pile over there gets put back first, if you know what I mean. And then we'll have our last little row to go through. So these aren't, there's no dirt on these at all. It's just a cursory once over really, just in case there is an odd sort of fingerprint, but I don't think there is. A little bit of polish required. So next week, yet again, I'm going to go back to more large format books because we're making real headway. One of those large format bookcases is now completely done, with the exception of I've got a couple of really quite packed shelves of general paperbacks. Now this is stuff that isn't part of, it's part of my collection, I suppose, but it's books that aren't really part of a series or anything per se, but they're books which I bought to like read and holiday reading and what have you. But they're not like collectible or anything like that. They're just books that I've got, and they are in a bit of a state, and there are some books there that do need sort of tidying up. So it may be that I pull off one of those 2 shelves which are full of those sort of more recent paperbacks. I'll fill 2 boxes up and we'll have a look through. There are some series in there which perhaps I might want to pull out now and put with my main sort of collection, and what will be left will be a real miscellaneous selection, shall we say, of just a few non-fiction books and things like that which I think you might enjoy looking at. Certainly there is some good stuff in there. Notice on this big thick one here, there's a little dink out the cover, and it looks like Kirk's got a white spot on his face, but there you go. It's okay. There we are. Right, I'll get these sorted out, and then we've got one more stack to do. So I can't imagine any of these now. At number 88, we're right at the very tail end of the run. I can't imagine any of these are going to need much work. This was a series, number 88. This is a series within the series, so this is the very last sort of tail end ones here. The New Earth series. When are these published then? This is 2000, so wow, quite recent for this channel. When you see books from the 1930s and occasionally even earlier than that, these are obviously they've not aged so badly, even though ultimately these will age because they'll be printed with recycled paper. That's number 94 here. I'm trying to think. I don't think the series made it to 100, now this is, I wanted to make sure we get these in order here. So that was number 94. Now these ones don't have numbers on. Yeah, they are separate, so we'll leave these. Errand of Vengeance. So that's a trilogy there. Errand of Vengeance 1, 2 and 3. And then these are 95, 96, 97. This is it. So these are the last 3. So this is number 95, because that was 94. This is number 95, 96, and 97, In the Name of Honor, Dayton Ward. And this, I believe, is the last numbered Star Trek book that they ever did. And then they went into the realms of doing like the little mini-series, 2002. They went into the realms of doing these little mini-series like these. So this is like a 3-parter. So we'll do these first. So this is books 1, 2, 3 of the Errand of Vengeance, like it's like a trilogy, little trilogy mini-series. And this is how they sort of went forward, didn't they? When Star Trek was still publishing so many books. Obviously, they don't publish anything like this anymore, but in their heyday, they did. So that was a trilogy. And then you had these, which was the Janus Gate, which is another set of 3. Books 1, book 2, and book 3. Like so. And then the last couple we had were these 2. So this one wasn't published by in the UK it was published by Pan Books, but in the US they did do a pocket edition of it, which is Spock's World. And then there's that first volume of Strange New Worlds, and as I said, they came out in much bigger trade paperback, but the first one here did come out in this big, thick A format book, but this is not a very enjoyable way to read it. They're much, much better when they're read in the trade paperback size. Right, so let's give this last little lot the brush off. Just do these in reverse order. They're not too bad because they're just more recent, aren't they? So it's not like they're full of dust, but there is a bit of dust on them. And that's potentially just from, you know, where I've had them. So, but yeah, they definitely sort of lost some of their charm, and they were sort of photograph covers and that. So they weren't, you know, it wasn't the greatest of endings to the series really, but I guess the sales have just dropped off, and you know, that's usually why these things stop in the end, you know, just down to the sales. There we are. Right, and then we'll work our way back and give these the final polish, hopefully keeping them in order. So that was number was that Brother's Keeper. Did I actually? Oh yeah, I did do these. So it's number 84, 85, 86, 87, and there we are, number 88. That is right then. Just want to make sure we get these in order. 88, yeah, number 89. I picked up this New Earth series because I didn't buy them at the time. It was like less than £10 off a seller on eBay. So the good news is, the good way to buy these Star Trek books nowadays is just buy multiple job lots and then fill in the gaps. And my friend Chris in the States said that's exactly how he did it. He just bought lots and lots of job lots, nice and cheap, and then just pulled the books that he actually needed himself. And he did a little bit of upgrading, which is what every sort of book collector does, and ended up with an extremely attractive collection. It really, really has got some great books in his library. You know, really top shape, and that's definitely the way to have it. There we are, 95. Yes, so as I said, next week we're going to do another one of large format books, and then I'm going to crack on with Books in the Office and do as I said, some of the more general sort of paperback series, and there's a couple of series within that, like the Patrick O'Brien books. I want to make sure I've actually got them all, because I'm not 100% sure I have, in all honesty. So I think there might be one or two of the end ones I may not have, in which case I'd like to track them down with the same sort of style covers if possible. Because that's a great series of, what was it, 19, 20 books, something like that. Anyway, it's been a bit of a trek voyage itself today, hasn't it? But we got there in the end. A little bit of books out of order and stuff, but nothing we couldn't handle. The main thing is, you've seen, in effect, all the numbered Star Trek series, plus the one-off giants and that, all in one epic video, which is just going to end up a little bit longer than an hour, that's fine. We don't mind that, do we? I'd rather do that than try and split this into two. So, if you have enjoyed it, do please give the video the thumbs up. Obviously hit that subscribe button if you've not already. I think we're well on the way, if not already hit like about 1,500 now, which is brilliant. Certainly getting that way, aren't we, which is really cool. I wasn't expecting any great guns with this channel, but I'm glad with where we're at. And I will, of course, see you again in 7 days' time, when, as I said, it's going to be more large format shenanigans for us to have a look at. There we are. Bye.